Hello and welcome to this mini webinar series on Hyperdocs. I'm Lori Guion and I'm excited to kind of share this with you. Usually I do Hyperdocs through Nearpod because it's my preference as far as like getting the information from you, but I figure with a half an hour, it'd be easier for me to kind of do it in Google Slides. So I'm going to share my slide deck with you. Let me do that real quick. And then I will share my screen, but I want you to have all the resources, and they're all here as we're coming all in. Here they all come. All right. Here is a copy of the slide deck so you can follow along today. Let me do attendance real quick again. And then present my screen. So as always, if you have a question, just unmute yourself, ask, or drop it in the chat. And after I go through the Hyperdoc that I have, or the information I have here, I'll go through those questions there as well. So whatever makes it easier for you. We're going to talk a little bit about Hyperdocs. So I've met all of the Hyperdocs ladies. It actually was started in California by 3 educators who were looking for a better way to do things in their classrooms. You might have heard the SAMR model. They were looking for things that modified and redefined, which are the higher ends of the SAMR model, or if you're thinking Bloom's taxonomy, they're the top ones where the students are driving their instruction, or they're driving their learning, versus pure substitution when you're talking about technology. And from that, Hyperdocs was born. It's a great book. It's more of a workbook than a sit and read kind of book. So I pull mine out still all the time because it has some great tips and tricks for setting up and creating your actual Hyperdocs. They've just actually relaunched a new website, which I'll share with you as well. That's going to give you some great information, some great resources, and they're opening up some online classes that'll be available for you to purchase and learn a little bit more about Hyperdocs from them. But I'm going to give you the foundation today of what a Hyperdoc is, how they work, and then give you some really great examples to kind of get you started on the Hyperdoc one. It's definitely, it's actually called Hyperdocs, the book. Here, let me find it. Let me go. Hyperdocs, CO. And the book is going to be on their website. So it's called the Hyperdoc Handbook, Digital Lesson Design Using Google Apps, and it's fabulous. So I highly recommend it. Mine's stuck in my office. I can't wait to get back to it, but it is there. All right, so let's talk about what a Hyperdoc is. A Hyperdoc does replace your normal worksheet, but it transforms it. It's not just a doc with links, and I hear some people call any doc that has links a Hyperdoc, and it's not. A Hyperdoc transforms that worksheet into something that's interactive, where it's student-driven versus teacher-led. It really can be used for any kind of lesson, any grade level, any age group. It really isn't one of those that you say, oh, this is great for 3rd grade only. No, this is great for any grade level. It's really great for online learning because it's very student-driven. So as you're designing these, and all of your work with these are on the front end of designing them, but when you're first designing them, you're thinking about how is the student going to do the work and how are they going to showcase what they've learned, and it's all going to be in one place, which is nice with the Hyperdoc. It definitely allows for differentiation because you can offer choice within it, or you can have different levels. You can create different Hyperdocs for different groups of students. It allows for more exploration. It definitely allows students to work at their own pace, which allows for more student agency. But the big key with a Hyperdoc is that students do the work. You have to set it up ahead of time for them, but they're really, truly doing the work to finish whatever it is, or to learn whatever it is you want them to learn. So I grabbed these from the internet because we all know that we have to sometimes give worksheets, and sometimes that's all that is needed on things. But when you want to transfer over to a Hyperdoc, it does transform and shift from teacher-led to student-driven, inquiry-based. If you have a group of students that are curious but don't always read directions, Hyperdocs are going to make them, it's going to force them to read the directions without allowing them to rely on you to tell them what to do. It allows for more exploration. It helps them with their organization, and it allows them to freely showcase what they've learned in very creative ways. So when a student does a Hyperdoc, you might have 30 students. All 30 of them might have a different end result, but they're still showcasing whatever the learning objective was for that lesson. Basic Hyperdoc formats. There's 2 major ones. On the left is a full-fledged Hyperdoc, and we're going to go through those individually. And then there's the one on the right. When you're starting these out, you might want to just do the ones on the right until students get used to that, and then adding another layer to it, and then continuously adding until you get to the point where students handle a full-fledged Hyperdoc. So the idea is that if you stay to the one on the right, you're exploring different ideas. So you're giving students resources to just kind of like freely look things over. You're giving them some intro information. So think of it as like your intro paragraph on an essay, where you're starting to give some information, but you're getting that hunger for them to want more. It could be guided as far as the students might have to do some work on this part where they explore and say what they learned or what they're curious about. If you do KWL charts, or you do Venn diagrams, it's a great place for some of that to happen, where students are starting to gather some information. The explain is the meat of a Hyperdoc, and the Hyperdoc explain section typically is where you give them the normal lesson that you would do, whether it's, with distance learning, it's through a video. It could be giving them something to read or sending them out to a resource, whatever it happens to be. A Nearpod would be great for that. That's where you're giving the information, and then the students are going to kind of figure that information out, or kind of start to discern it. Some teachers, when they create these, the explain is the students saying, explaining what they've learned, what they're curious about, and what they're going to do next. So sometimes it can be more student-led, but that's up to you. Typically, the explain is more the meat of the lesson that you're giving them. And then the apply is what the students are going to be doing. So if they're doing a lesson on, factors of 4 or something like that, whatever they've learned, they're going to then apply that information. So if you're doing one on figurative language, the application might be putting together a song that uses different types of figurative language, or whatever that happens to be. So if you can mute your microphones, that'd be great. Awesome. Okay. Any questions on the base one? Oh, that's what I was coming back for. Any questions on the base idea of the 3-step Hyperdoc? We're good? Okay. So let's dive into a full-fledged one, because that's where the real meat of a Hyperdoc comes from. So you can see on the left-hand side, and I gave you the link to the templates, which are all on the Hyperdoc website. So you can have these templates that are already organized for you, and you just start to build from them. But on the left, you'll see that you have engage, explore, explain, apply, share, reflect, and extend. So there's 7 different parts. And as you're going through each part, you're going to have the students do a different activity. And I'm going to break each of those down for you. So the first is the engage. So the engagement is where you're getting the students excited to learn. It could be a simple meme or a GIF. It could be that they listen to a podcast or they watch a video. You're piquing their interest. So if they're learning about westward expansion, you might show a video of, something, that's related to it. Maybe they get to play a game or something along those lines, like Oregon Trail or something like that, that kind of gets them to start to think about what they might be learning. You could use anything you want for this section. I put a few of my favorites on here. And I'll just kind of go through what they are. Anything in the G Suite is great for this. So it could be them filling out a survey. It could be a Google slide with a couple links to send them out to something. They could read a quick article. Answer Garden is like, it creates a Wordle. So you might say, what are your favorite video games to play? They type them all in, and it creates this, this Wordle of all of these different words that they said. You can give them a short Nearpod lesson that just kind of gives them some information, or maybe you can send them on a 360, virtual field trip. So they start to explore, if you're studying ancient China, they might be exploring that way. One of the big ones I used to use for Engage is the Pixar shorts. Those are just like, Pixar to be, they're really robust video, but they're short. So they're under 5 minutes in length usually. Even shorter usually. My favorite one was called For the Birds, and I'll actually open up to their website. And what the Pixar shorts do is they're usually don't have any words. They're just visually appealing. So this is my favorite. And I would use this to, because I taught 6th grade English, to talk about context clues. I would do it to talk about being kind to others, because there's some bullying that happens in this one. We talk about being different. We talk about anything along those lines. There's so many different things you can do with this video. And so I'd have the students watch that as the engage. And then from there, we would build on what we were going to be doing with the lesson to kind of build it down. But right away, they're interested because it's a quick little video. I think this one's like 3.5 minutes. if it gives me the time on it. Maybe it doesn't. But you can click on them. They're all available on YouTube for you to take a look and watch. But they give you some information as far as what it's about, and then you can watch the video. So you can take a look at them and see them. And then they have some other resources there as well. You can play a game like a Kahoot or a Goose Chase. You can go to flippity.net and do a hangman or bingo or something along those lines. Google 360 stories are those robust 360-degree videos. If you don't know Great Big Story for your older kids, I would say that the younger ones might be fine with it, but you'd have to really watch the video and see if it really relates enough to them. But these are videos that are very visually appealing. They're a little bit longer, but they definitely have some different topics that you might be doing in your class. And you watch the story, and then you can have some different conversations. But again, because they're so interesting and visually appealing, it's going to engage your students to want to learn more. So you can see some of the different ones they have there. All right, so that is the engage part. Now you've hooked them, right? It's the hook. You've got them interested. They want to learn more. Now they're going to do free exploration, and that's the explore section. This is going to have more content. So now you're starting to give them some of the meat, but you really want the students to be thinking about more about what they're learning. So it could be a doc or a lesson. It could be a video. It could be a Google map or, a mind map where they have to click on different parts of the map to learn different parts of a story. So for example, it could be if you're going to read A Long Walk to Water, you take them to Google Earth and they get to explore the places that happen in the story. So they get some context of what it looks like on Google Street View or something like that. Google Arts and Culture has art and museum displays about different parts of all over the world. It has almost all the museums in the world on there. So you can show them different art or historical artifacts if you're studying ancient Egypt or something like that on your Hyperdoc. You can give them a video. You can take them out to an article on Wonderopolis. You can still use Nearpod. Any of these totally works, but just to give you some ideas on what you can do in this section. But the Explore, again, should be gathering more information, but still allowing that free exploration. Then we get to the meat of it. So that's the explain. So that's when you're pulling your students together usually to do that direct instruction. But what you're going to do here is, because we're doing this virtually, or if you do them in your classroom in the fall, you want them to be doing this self-paced. You can do it through an Ed Puzzle, a Nearpod lesson. You can use Explain Everything and record yourself. You can have a wakelet of resources, a video on YouTube. Anything within the G Suite will help your student get that direct instruction. So this is the meat of what you want them to be doing. And then now that they've explored, they've been engaged, they've gotten the meat of the lesson, this is normally where you just give the test, right? You normally do direct instruction, they do a worksheet, you give them a test. Here, instead of having the test, which you can still do in the apply, there's nothing wrong with that if you feel that that's what matters and that's what you need. But you can also use apply by giving them an activity in Seesaw to create something in Buncee or Adobe Spark or Canva, whatever one your school district uses. I like augmented reality, so often I'll have the students create in 3D Bear or create a sketch note. You can have them do a Flipgrid video, anything within the G Suite. So this is wherever you're normally going to have them apply what they've learned, this is where you're going to put in the apply section is where that goes. You can even put a choice board and they get to choose which way they want to apply what they've learned. Then this is a big one, is the share. And this is one that usually, like the first steps up to the apply, we often do with any lesson in our classroom. But this is where it kind of becomes more authentic and really broadcasts what they've learned. The share should really be an authentic audience. And the authentic audience needs to be more than just you and the student. It could be that they're sharing it in Seesaw for their students to comment on, or putting it in the stream in Google Classroom for students to have a debate on, or you're sharing it on a class blog, or you're publishing it to the web in some way. It doesn't all have to be, not every one has to be shared outside the classroom, but the concept is that students are going to do better work and they're going to be more engaged in the process if they know other people other than their teacher are going to see that work. So you want them to share whatever it is they did, you want them to share, which is why you want the apply to be more creative than a test, because you're not going to share grades beyond you and the student. But think of it like when you're in your classrooms and you used to do, like I used to put on plays a lot, or I have the students create an object that would sell in a science museum. in the gift shop, because the gift shop's always my favorite part of a science museum. So they'd have to create a toy or something along those lines. So you're having them create something, and now you're going to have them share it. So they used to have to sell their goods when we had our museum activity that we did. But it could also be a persuasive, you need to buy it. I used to do a project every year with Legos, and the students would create with it, and then they would decide what it does, and then they would write a 30-second commercial to try to get the rest of us in the class to want to purchase their item. So any of those kind of things where you're sharing what you've learned and moving it on. You can also use coding software to do this. I've done different things where the students were learning about like in this one where you see that they have all the things, all the Legos on them, but they were talking about the colonies, and they coded the robots, the Dash robots, to visit different parts of the colonies. So they go to the Northeast colonies or whatever, and they go to each of the different ones. And when they got there, they would tell a fact. So that they would code their robot to travel to that location, tell a fact about that colony, and then they would code it again to go to the next colony and tell a fact about that one. So you can certainly code that information too, to bring in that computer science, computational thinking kind of concept. The next one down is the reflection. And this is one that is often left out when we do things in the classroom, because this is where we're like, we don't have time for that. But actually, if you look at the top 10 education systems in the world, they spend more time in the reflection part of a lesson than they do in any other part of a lesson, because they know that if the students are reflecting on what they've learned, what they're still curious about, and what they feel they still need to know, they're more engaged in the learning process, because they're thinking of how it affects them and and what they need to know next. So the reflection part, even though I'm guilty of it too, it doesn't always make it into the final cut of a lesson because you just don't have the time. It really is where the magic is. And they can do a reflection on a Padlet or a Wakelet. You could have a Jamboard to do that. They could do a Flipgrid response. I used one a couple years ago. I made this little video, and I'm going to show it to you. I used an app on my phone called My Talking Avatar, and this was a reflection of what it's like to be a Sphero hero, because we were asked to do that the first year we became Sphero heroes. So I'll play it for you.
Being a Sphero hero has allowed me to grow and learn in so many ways. This community has incredible educators from all over the world. We get incredible support from the Sphero Hero team, and I can tell you that each and every one of them are incredibly innovative and enthusiastic. I've learned so much from this family. We have laughed together, encouraged each other, and pushed the boundaries of what can happen in the classroom. It is truly wonderful to be a Sphero hero.
So that's a reflection on me being a Sphero hero, but you can see how the students would be engaged in designing their avatar and then recording their voice to do something like that. The last one I put down at the bottom here is Synth. That one is actually a place where students can create mini podcasts, and then people can respond back to them. Really cool idea if they don't want to have their face on video. So I did hear a ding. I just want to make sure I don't have anyone. Oh, maybe we had a question. So what blog sites are 2D compliant? So here's the thing, Eric, when you're talking about 2D compliance, it matters with anywhere that students are going to be logging in. If you're reading a blog, you don't have to worry about it. They're not signing into it. It's more wherever they're collecting information, where they have to create an account. So that's when you have to worry about that. So that's a good one. So yeah, science phenomenon. Yep, you could certainly create one on that. Yep, made with Sphero. Sphero is a robot. I have one. Oh, here we go. It's a little ball robot. If you're not familiar with these, let me stop presenting for a second just to show you. This is a Sphero robot. I've been using these in my class for several years now. I started with one, but and then we built from there. So Sphero is a great company to work with, and they do some really cool things. So much so that I had to bring it home over break, right? Because I had to have it. All right, so let me share my screen again. Any other questions while I'm not sharing? No? Okay. Oh, I saw one and then I hit the button. Hang on. Sphero and the emoji just showed me. Nothing to do with one another. No, that was My Talking Avatar. It's a app on my phone where you can create your avatar, and then you record your voice and take pictures and things like that. So, oh yeah, Janine, you have the Spheros, or you have them, right? Yeah, we'll get them from you. Don't worry about it at some point. I'm not worried. I know they're in good hands. All right, so let me see here. Were there any other questions? Yep. Okay, so let me go back to presenting. All right, here we go. Okay, so that's the reflection part. The final part of a Hyperdoc is extend. So extend is where your students, this is where you normally, you always have the kid that's like, I'm done, right? And you don't know what to do with them because they're done fast and they've done a good job, because there's kids that definitely can handle that, get things done quickly. Well, this is where you enrich them. Or you have a kid that gets through it and like, I still don't get it, right? So Pythagorean theorem, I don't get it, right? So the extend could be extra help. So the extend is now they have the opportunity to learn more on the topic. Maybe they find they absolutely are fascinated with the Titanic, so you send them out to other resources on it, whatever it happens to be. I used an app for this little video you see on your screen, an app called Jigspace on my iPad. It's on my phone too, where they can go through and they see these like interactive augmented reality jigs. There's also Jig Workshop where they can create their own. So you can always send them out to do something like that, where they're doing something different. You can send them to another article. You can take them into artificial intelligence world and do some really cool things with them. You could play a game with them. Deck toys and boom cards are two that I'm learning right now. And I've used deck toys a little bit, and I've researched boom cards, but I'm still learning those. But they're like a Nearpod or a Pear Deck or a Hyperdoc, where you can do different things, and actually you can build your Hyperdocs right on deck toys. So you can always extend out what they're doing with fun activities, and it should be something that keeps them wanting to learn. So I want to take you out to some examples, and all of these examples I pulled right from the Hyperdocs website. That's where I go to get mine. That's where I like to look for them. So I'm going to show you 4 different examples based on, well, we'll see how many we get through based on time. But I want to take you through the examples and kind of show what they kind of look like. And everybody designs theirs a little bit different. Sometimes they skip a step, and that's okay. You really build them based on what you need to do for your students. But the idea is that it's student driven and the students are doing the work. So the first one here is actually from one of the Hyperdocs ladies, Lisa Highfill. I've met her a bunch of times. She's fabulous. I believe she was a 5th grade teacher, or she is a 5th grade teacher. I could be wrong on the grade, but she's out in California. She's amazing. Follow her on Twitter. But she gives a little note at the top to tell teachers what to do. And this is the big thing. When you find Hyperdocs, they're always going to be that you have to edit them, and you need to edit. Don't request edit access. They're not going to give you edit access to their original. You go over to File, you click Make a Copy, and then you call it whatever you want to call it and hit OK. Now you have a full editable copy. You don't have to request it from them. They're not going to give you editing rights on their original. They want to keep their original as is. So once you have that set, and it wants to load, you can go through that Hyperdoc. So now I have it in full editing. So now I can go through, I can change out the notes at the top to be directions or whatever I want to do. And then I can go through and check out the activities and change them the way I want to change them. So the Engage is an Android yourself. So you're creating yourself into an Android. So an avatar kind of thing. Then the Explore uses this whole table where the students are going to record their notes as they go through. So they're going to read, watch, and you're going to have them put different information based on what they learned. All right. And then as we move into the Explain, they're going to go over to the Padlets and look at different things and different jobs that use robots and things that robots couldn't do. And then you can learn some different ideas there. She also gave for the teachers out there how to use Padlet. And then they're going to choose a tool to show what they know. This is the apply part. All right. So they're going to decide that part, and then they're going to play direct a robot, and they're going to do these links that you see here. And then they're going to plan and design. And then when they're done, they're going to post this out. They're going to reflect on what they learned using Seesaw, and then extend it by creating their own investigation. Simple outline, lots of links. All right. So that's one example. I did hear a ding. So was there a question? Yeah, you can have a copy of the presentation. Yeah, I put it in earlier, but let me give it to you now again, because I want you to have the links. There you go. All right, next one over. This is one for your middle school, high school. One that combinate that curiosity of, is technology killing our friendships? So again, if I want to make a copy of this so I can change it up and do different things with it, I'll go to File, Make a Copy. All right, and then it'll create a copy for me. So then this one is a little bit more streamlined in the way it's kind of built. There's your read, analyze, complete, watch. So you can see that they tell you each step, and then the final one is share. A little bit more basic, but still gives you the idea as far as what they need to do and what you're going to go out to. This one is a very intricate one. This teacher, Nadine, if you follow her on Twitter, she's always posting these really enriching or beautiful looking Hyperdocs. So this one's on biographies. They go through, and here's the information you need to have. Here's the research methods that they can do. Here's where they're going to show what they know, so the apply. And then there's different things as they go through for what they have to do. So you're going to read and watch and figure these things out. She gives a planning sheet for them to do the work, and then they would actually build their project. Again, same as we did in Docs. If I want a copy of this, I go to File, Make a Copy, Entire Presentation, and then it will create a copy for me. And then it's fully editable. The last one I wanted to give you is actually one on Hyperdocs, because this is a great one, right? So Nicole Beardsley put this one together. This is a how-to step-by-step Hyperdoc that you can go through and learn what a Hyperdoc is, even more so than what we're doing here. And then you can go through and watch the little videos. They're kind of fun. And then you can make a copy and do whatever you need to do as you go through there. I gave you even more examples at the bottom. This is one that is on the Hyperdocs website, but what it does is it breaks it down based on SAMR. So when you do a worksheet online, or you just give a Google Doc that had the same information the kids used to do on paper, that's pure substitution. Nothing has changed. You're still doing the same skills you always did in the classroom. Technology hasn't changed anything. When you shift into augmentation, they're using a direct substitute tool, but it has some sort of change. So it becomes a little bit more transformative, but not terribly. So maybe they're doing a shared Google Doc of some sort. Modification is when there's a significant task redesign. So the students use technology to learn how to learn. So that becomes a little bit higher end. And then redefinition is your ultimate goal. That's the top of Bloom's taxonomy as well, where the students are creating things that were never possible before, but you can do now, like doing augmented reality, or doing a podcast, whatever it happens to be. So each of these here's that you see are all templates for different types of Hyperdocs. So you can take a look and see. And sometimes pure substitution is all you need. Sometimes you really want to redefine that lesson for like a choose your own adventure activity like we did last week. All right, so you have that information. Underneath there, you also see the website, which I opened up to before, the Hyperdocs website. Start with the get started, read the information on there. It's going to give you more information about Hyperdocs. You'll have some information to try it. You'll learn more through their different classes. You can ask questions. They have a very active Facebook group. You can find out a little bit more about Hyperdocs. Like I said, they have different courses that they're opening up. Under the Find, that's where you're going to find those templates that are going to help you build your actual Hyperdoc. You'll see examples, which is where I pulled a lot of them from. And you can even search their Hyperdoc, whatever you call it. They have a whole bunch of different Hyperdocs available to you. So you click on samples, and it's going to have one for each subject. These all open up into a Google folder to save right in your Google Drive. And they even break it down by elementary examples, secondary examples, and so on. So lots of examples of ones that you can use. The idea with Hyperdocs is teachers give teachers, not teachers pay teachers. So all of your Hyperdocs should be free. If anyone ever charges you for one, don't buy it, because Hyperdocs are supposed to be free for everyone. They have some different courses to learn. I mentioned the book. They have some information on the media to read about them. They have their own blog where they have different things that they're explaining a little bit more about Hyperdocs. So that's all available for you on the website. And then I gave you examples of ones that I've created on different things. Mine are obviously going to be more professional learning based, but they offer resources and ideas and that sort of thing. So you can see how I normally have set up a Hyperdoc. Some of them are out on Nearpod, like this one. The 4 C's is going to take you out to a student-paced Nearpod. So when I click join, you'll see that you can go through and do the different activities, or some of them are on Google Slides. But even as you're going through, as we click the different links to go to different things, when I click on it, some of these are going to take you out to Nearpod, even so. So I think it's in the Explorer. No, different one. So this one brings you out to a website. So so you've got all different things in here that that will take you to different places. Here it is. Under the Explain, I take you to 4 different lessons that are on Nearpod that take you out to learn something more. So you can see how different Hyperdocs are set up that way. And then finally, I want to mention that you should be creative when you're doing your Hyperdocs. So add images, emojis, memes, GIFs, quotes, videos, make them fun. And all of these are an example of a Hyperdoc that does that. So that's where I kind of want to end. I did give you more resources here as well. So you'll have lots of different examples that you can kind of go through. But we have reached our end of our half hour. Any questions? All right, I'm going to stop recording. If you have any questions about anything, you're welcome to stay on.